Okay, I'd like to thank the speakers again. We have a little bit of extra time in our schedule, and so I'd like to open up the floor for questions regarding how we're using AR in aerospace and aeronautics. So if you recall, we have Christi Fiorentini and Shelley Peterson from Lockheed Martin, Dr. Severin Todt of Lufthansa Technik. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll come to you with a microphone. You can ask the question and get some expert advice. I'll kind of start off, and my background is not in aerospace, but it's in manufacturing. And we want to get the technology out on the plant floor. The products that we do right now, we're using iPads, tablets, not because we feel like that's the best platform, but that's because what is accepted out on the plant floor right now. I can get an iPad out on the plant floor and use it. I would like to use wearables. I'd like to use glasses, but there's some concerns. A lot of times you can't take Google Glass or a HoloLens or something out on the floor because there are concerns with safety, not just is the frame of these glasses safety rated. Some of them are, but it's more about the idea of AR being over your field of vision, causing safety concerns, causing distractions, and it's the same, I think it's the same reason why we don't have AR yet in the windshields of our automobiles, because as we're driving down the road, if we have something popping up, it's going to take a couple of people to say, hey, I was distracted, and this is kind of a problem. So my question is, out in your plant floor, your processes, what is it actually going to take to get where we can have more use of wearables out on the plant floor? Is it when the ROI overcomes the concerns about safety? Is it when we've proven out that we have a way to go forward where safety is no longer a concern? And it's a question to all of you guys.
Hello. Okay, I wasn't sure if I could work this. So I think from our perspective, it's really probably going to be a lot about testing it out, doing more pilots, getting more acceptance of the fact that it's not necessarily a safety concern, it's just the perception that it's a safety concern. Also, there are going to be some areas where it doesn't make sense, where it is too obstructive for what they're doing, and maybe they wouldn't need to use it in the application. And they'd have to look at other technologies that may help do their job. But I think also, it's in the confined areas that we're doing the work, we're not moving around a lot, so that makes it beneficial for us to use this technology because you are probably focused in that one area, so it's not like you're walking downtown and you could run into people. You're actually looking at your work surface through these glasses. So for most of the enterprise, I think it's actually advantageous for wearables because you are confining what you're doing to a specific set of tasks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure. I think that we have to also look at very creative solutions. We don't want to bring in a tool that's intended for error mitigation if it imposes errors or accidents. So, for example, if the case that you mentioned where if you're walking around and data pops up, are there creative ways to address that? Can we use the accelerometers or the gyros to determine that you are walking around and make sure that data isn't presented unless you have stopped? Are there ways to make sure that the field of view is appropriate for the environment? I think in some cases the field of view is an issue, and as the technology advances, it'll be more reasonable to employ the technology. But there's still areas where we see the ROI, and if we're cautious and we use the technology for those purposes, we're not trying to push it to areas where it doesn't yet belong, I think that it'll be more successful in the long run.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So any questions out? It's a little hard for me to see because of the light, so if you have a question, here we go. Excellent. I'm just going to give you the mic.
Hi, this is for Dr. Lott. Integration with SAP for especially the quality control. Have you done enough integration where you're going into the quality module to launch nonconformances, Or, what type of transactions are you able to do from the wearables into SAP?
Okay. I don't know about transactions in special, but we're not feeding the quality model. We're feeding customer service, the customer service model. So we just giving the results of our work tasks, and we're giving the time we spend on each individual work task. So from that information, the quality model is fed. So it's a quite neat and simple integration into the ERP system. We're pulling the CMMs from the ERP system and from our document management system to provide the information. And the feedback of the information is quite simple and tiny information that we feedback.
Thank you. Next question.
Thanks. I have two questions. One is around the use cases. You've each identified in very clear terms what those use cases are, but in no case did I see the use of the augmented reality system to do any metrology, any measurement, and why or why not. So that's my sort of first question. The other one is all of you described in your, or maybe it was only Christi and Shelley, about remote assistance. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about what those systems are, what's on the other side of the, who's the expert, what is the interface that that expert is using?
Sorry, what was that last? Didn't catch the last sentence. So the use cases that I showed here with the 20 minutes, we didn't list an all-inclusive, but we are looking into the more creative uses of the technology as well. So there are pursuits in those areas. And for remote assistance, we have a large group of CPEs, subject matter experts. We polled the CPEs to see how they felt about remote assistance technology. And it was almost unanimous. They come back and state, within the last week, I had a delay because within the last month, I had this happen, this happen, this happen. I needed to fly to support, or, I had to step away from a very important pursuit in order to support. So that across the board, we think that the remote assistance technology will be very useful. Now, we also have security concerns with technologies, and so we have to address that as well. So there are steps to be able to use the technology within our environments from a security perspective. And for us in the defense industry, that's a major part of the effort. In addition to looking at how the technology can benefit the workforce. I would say it would be almost equal or greater.
From a metrology aspect, I guess, we have a lot of projects that we're looking at metrology. I honestly haven't seen the level of maturity in a wearable device that matches what the metrology technology is out there. However, I do see there definitely being the potential of deploying that technology to the wearables in the future. But it is challenging when you're working with an assembly that is mostly repeatable, but some of the things we want to see is where are the discrepancies. And if you're looking at maybe wire harnesses, those wires could be solidly placed in different positions. So metrology still has a lot of advancement to be able to weed that kind of data out and truly find the discrepancies that we're looking for. But we do have a lot of stuff on that in the future, I think, that might be able to converge with the AR wearables concepts. Regarding remote assistance, a lot of interest, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about how that is truly like a lower hanging fruit, which it is. If we could get the technology in the hands of the users, they'd see advantages from it tomorrow. But the problem is like Shelley mentioned, security, contractual agreements. We're looking at some opportunities of putting this type of technology in the hands of our customer. Our customer has to buy off on our products. DCMA, who's the Defense Contractor Management Agency, they have to buy off. So how do we give them the ability to do those buy-offs without having to be present? And that not only helps us, but it helps them be more I guess, remote from the actual task and be able to respond to more inspections, and it is an overall solution. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. It's just a matter of working through more of the challenges on the security side.
Yeah, Christi, we're talking about the remote guidance or remote assistance. That's a low-hanging fruit, yes, it is. And for us, the motivation is, in Germany, we are pretty well educated. As a consequence, we are pretty well paid, and that's a problem. Because the working hours are too high to be competitive on the market. So we're switching our work to other regions in the world. They may be cheaper. So, but with lowering the payment of the workers, the qualification is also dropping. So we have medium-scaled or educated workers doing a lot of work, but problems arise that these people can't handle. So we have the experts located in Hamburg who are asking for who's sitting on the other side. These are the experts located in Hamburg or in German locations or European locations, guiding the other side through the inspection process or the repair process to provide that additional expert data on the task.
All right, great. Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, this question could be for any of you guys or all of you maybe. Based on your experience on the 3 use cases that you've put up there, either in training, production usage, and or quality control, if you had a clean slate to start over tomorrow, where would you implement first? There's a lot of places to go.
That's a loaded question. I think if you could remove all the obstacles, remote inspection would be the easiest to see a return because it does impact a lot of different types of tasks. And that's why I would go with that one, just because the fact that you can eliminate multiple steps by using that type of technology. And we're already pursuing it, but it's more of a low-tech solution with Skype, because we have Skype already on our computers and our tablets. So it's a matter of how do you take that to the next level. If I could redesign a new airplane, I would do step-by-step work instructions completely on AR devices. So that's where I would go if I was building the next airplane and I had all of the power in the world, because that would be truly advantageous on taking this to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. I think that remote assistance, once you have the capability, you can use it across the entire corporation. There's no other efforts or capabilities required in order to be able to use that technology once you have it within the system. Also with work instructions, we see a great potential for return on investment there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for the MRO processes, it's the inspection process as well. We found out that for the inspection process to be assisted, you need just a few a small technology footprint. So you just don't need any fancy stuff like 3D overlays and stuff. You just need instructions, step-by-step instructions. The technology is out there, so we could apply that if we have the management agreement to go for.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Thank you. So just drilling a little deeper into remote assistance, I wonder if you've encountered challenges in pilots of that, and some of the areas just to stimulate, thoughts might be, a vibration if something's mounted on the head, the camera is kind of pretty jerky, remote areas where the video bandwidth, the network that you have might be a limitation, performance of cameras in dark areas, being able to read part numbers, any of those kinds of issues. Does the dream, match the reality, and if so, if not, what's the gap?
One of the things that we have piloted is, like I said, not a really AR solution. It's just using Skype. And they're inspecting on the inside of a wing. So they have hard to reach spots, and even putting a pair of smart glasses on wouldn't actually get to those spots. So they've got a webcam on kind of a stick that we 3D printed, put some lights on because of the low light situation. We had actually 3D lights on the ring around the camera. So those are some challenges for taking the remote inspection to the next step of using AR in that, because there's still going to be areas that have limitations with lighting, with constrained spaces, and even in that same example, bandwidth was a problem. They had hard time staying connected via Wi-Fi because it would cut out on the inside of the wing. So those are definitely challenges that we're going to face, especially in such a big building where you build aircraft. Even if you have a good Wi-Fi source throughout, there may be spots where that falls in and out. And for remote inspection, that's not going to be positive because you need that constant stream.
And we also see a synergy across different industries. So when you think of the medical industry, you don't immediately see a correlation to space manufacturing. But when you take a closer look, there's a clean room in both cases, often. There's a need to be hands-free, a really important need to be hands-free, say for a surgeon. We need to be hands-free as well. Even when it's remote assistant technology, you need to be able to navigate through in new ways. And there's a need for that connectivity. There's a number of correlations. And so we found that in looking at how those technologies are being used in those environments, we're finding creative solutions evolving that also benefit us.
Okay, next question.
This is for Dr. Todt from Lufthansa. With regard to the use case for remote inspection and or remote guidance, are you looking at the use case purely between Lufthansa people to Lufthansa people? Or are you looking at use cases beyond where you would perhaps need the involvement of the airframe manufacturer or the engine manufacturers? So outside the walls of Lufthansa, are you looking beyond just Lufthansa to Lufthansa?
So the question was if we think about having remote guidance or assistance with the OEM providing the aircraft. No ideas in that direction at the moment, but providing the same idea, like giving the remote guidance to our clients, like enabling them to provide the information that we need to provide better services, or to enable them to do their own services. So it's down to the client and not up to the OEM.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question.
I was just wondering, it seems like you guys have a lot of projects going on, and just getting a better sense of, I mean, how did you guys really get this thing started? I mean, you got to have some money, you got to have resources. Like, how does that all happen? Is it mostly in-house, a lot of enthusiastic people? Is it outside providers that are providing guidance? Little color on that would be cool.
You want to say?
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, we are not enough people to deal with all that projects that we have in mind. So we have to limit our projects. And still, there are a lot of projects that we are driving. While we have our suppliers, we have our technology suppliers that we involve and we have a good relationship with. So we are using our suppliers to provide new ideas. These ideas we have to present to, of course, our management, as well as to our shop floor workers. What we learned is that to convince the management, we need the guidance of the shop floor workers. So if we have enthusiastic people in the shop floor, they're gonna spread the message of there's a cool technology, I need that technology. So it's coming from the bottom up, and we're spreading the message from the top. So it fits in the middle. So we have the middle management as well as the shop floors spreading the message and supporting us in getting the money to do the projects.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Regarding the use cases of our work instruction on smart glasses, I wonder if you have learned anything about the potential challenges for information navigation on the small display and the potential ergonomic issues like eye fatigue.
Like what? I didn't catch the last word. Sorry.
The potential ergonomic issues like eye fatigue.
When we did our, the proof of concept that I referenced up there, we did have some concerns of, people always have concerns of like the eye fatigue or wearing the devices. At the end of the day, the user that had it on did not really complain about it. He was more concerned with the fact that in order for us to achieve the 3D overlays, we had to do the video AR, and if he was going to pick tools and he had his hands up in front of him, it would be a little bit of a lag time. So I know there's solutions out there to overcome that. That was just the exact example and the use case that we did with that. But if we were to use this on a 40-hour to 60-hour basis, that would need further study, and we're not quite at that point. I don't know if we'd ever get to that point just based on the use cases that we'd identify. We'd probably have it for specific applications that they'd be using. As part of the, I guess, the point to get to that point is very challenging for us. As I mentioned, we have a lot of old documentation, and converting that over is a tremendous amount of money. And so that's why we'd also have to attack it from a very specific use case perspective, because we'd have to vet out that return on investment. So that's why we're taking a very focused approach on what makes sense so that we can convert the data over as we deem necessary.
Okay, next question.
When you recommend to the business owners to deploy these experiences, will you have to tell them to increase resources or add new skill sets to what they have? What do you see? I mean, will the business be able to just absorb this new technology and deliver it, or will we have to add new departments, new resources, new skill sets?
Yeah, that's a good question, and our hope is to get to a point where it's not necessary. With the work instructions that we were building, we wanted to create a situation where we didn't have to have a software engineer create those work instructions. We wanted the mechanical engineers and the people currently working in those roles to be able to do that on their own. So the tools that we're using, they allow that capability, and it's an important topic. You know, we don't want to have to bring in significant additional engineering in order to perform these. It needs to be as streamlined as possible for ROI.
Okay, next question.
Hi, thank you. This is particularly for Lockheed too. So you talked a lot about the challenges and things, and maybe I missed it, but is there a specific case right now where on the manufacturing floor they are using smart glasses in a particular use case? And then secondarily, has all your work been in-house, or have you partnered with companies here and anyone in particular? Thanks.
Our work is not all in-house. We have partnered, and yeah, it's been a good experience. Some of those companies are here. If you'd like to talk to me afterwards, I can give you more details on that. For the first part of your question.
Are we using anything?
Oh, yes.
Actively, like.
Are there instances right now where you're saving money with smart glasses in a manufacturing situation?
We are using smart glasses in pilot scenarios. And really, I think that with the security challenges, you get through the security challenges, I think it's going to expand rapidly. And we're very close to that. We're working through those, and we're finding solutions. So it's on a healthy path, and the ROI, potential ROI, provides enough reason to continue, you know.
I would agree with that. I've been asked by internal people of why don't we build this ourselves? And I don't see that as a benefit to us. There's a lot of really great, smart people building this type of technology. Many of you, I'm sure, in the room that have been on the leading edge of this. And so we have partnered and aim to partner a lot on this technology because it doesn't benefit us to build it ourselves. For the pilot, I think if we could get through our internal challenges, a lot of the things that we have built to date could be implemented and could be being used, but it's just, it's interesting that you work with the IT group and I work with more of the manufacturing side. We have a problem of bridging that gap right now. And if we can get over that of how we integrate and how we purchase equipment and how we maintain equipment, that would be very helpful for us to have a successful implementation, but it's mostly organizational, not technology-based.
It's mainly the same for the Lufthansa. Not applying any glasses in the production field, and trying to bridge the gap between the shop floors and the IT people. And for that reason, I think we need some new in-house disciplines to bridging that gap. So that is the knowledge that we want to keep in-house to know how to bridge that gap, but we are not providing technologies. There are experts out there. They're concentrating on technology, and I want these experts to work for me and to provide the technology. We have not the capabilities to develop the technology at such a high degree.
Okay, next question.
Hi, I'm Aurélien Cotet. I'm from Airbus, so it's going to be interesting. We built our things in-house. We have a system that has been working since 2011 on our assembly line. But my question is more like, we are talking about tablets and we're talking about glasses, but we haven't talking about projection. Are you working on this type of thing, like projecting augmented reality directly on the fuselage, for instance, or something like that?
We actually have implemented that technology in the past. I see you have done laser projection. We've got optical projection for various work tasks, installing fasteners, locating brackets, laser projection as well. And we've been implementing that for years, but we have not developed that in-house. There are a few vendors out there that we work with to do those tasks. So when we start introducing AR on smart glasses and tablets, people think of it as a different technology. I don't think of it as a different technology, it's just a different form factor. So we're trying to make them understand that we're just trying to take it to a different form factor for showing similar information. But we have production uses of projection, currently building airplanes every day.
Okay, next question.
Hi, this question is for all of you, and it's regards to return on investment. There's been some different people we talked to have some pretty high numbers. I've heard things as high as like 30%. And transitioning it from the tech people to the business people, if I actually said, hey, you'll get a 30% return on investment, there's going to be gobs of money sitting in my lap. And so during your use case studies, did you actually have any numbers that seemed that you had a lot of confidence in that said, hey, this is pretty representative of our return on investment?
Actually, while introducing the laser projection system, we estimated a benefit or return of invest of like 35 to 40% based on that student work, and that actually generated a problem for us because that was so high that the management said, no, that can't be possible. So do some more work to prove that it's really true, do more work, and that's the reason why it took about 3 years to really get that going, and we had some, I call it some black money to keep that project going until we had it in production, like under the hand, to prove, okay, in productive environment, we really achieve like 50%. So we had to prove our good, what is it?
ROI?
Huh?
Return on investment?
Yeah, our good prognose to really keep the project going and realize the project.
Yeah, I feel for all of our projects, we have to do a thorough cost-benefit analysis to get funding to actually introduce them to production. And that's what we're trying to do today with AR, is do those pilots so we can have real numbers. Because I agree, like that's kind of the numbers floating around, 15 to 30% improved productivity. Well, I would get all sorts of money to do that, but we won't make a decision without being able to prove that that's true. And so we are trying to capture that as we go through some of these pilots, but it's more difficult than you'd expect. And so you still take a pretty conservative approach to the numbers that you present, at least for how we go about getting additional funding to implement.
All right, next question.
Yeah, hi. How are you working to create standards for AR within your respective companies? And if you are doing that, how are you training new technicians on those standards? And how are you flowing those kind of back to the community as a whole that's developing hardware, such that instead of just developing hardware for gaming applications and things, they can be also focusing on hardware that's very specifically used within the manufacturing field and industry.
The question was, how do we train our employees?
On standards.
On standards.
I don't think we have any yet.
Is there any process in place to work on that? 'Cause that sounds like
Yeah, it's in work. So there's a number of things that have to be worked in parallel because the technology is so different and so new for us. So standards are important. The requirements for the devices within the environment, along with the security side. There's a number of efforts that are required in order to have the devices available. But
Yeah, I think it's such a new technology, and the industry itself is still trying to establish a standard. So for us to establish an internal standard when the technology is still evolving, I think is premature. And it's going to be something that if we can grow with the technology, it'll be necessary to start understanding that. But at this point, it's too early in the process, at least for where we are.
Okay, just to add a note to that, the area organization that is kind of hosting this event, that's one of the things that we're trying to do as an organization is to afford the adoption of AR into manufacturing and industry, and standards is certainly a part of that. So we're having discussions amongst solution providers and people like our panel here that are actually end users to first define what standards actually need to be in place that are going to be usable and that are going to be, to afford that adoption. So a lot of the larger companies would rather, from my opinion and from what I've seen, go outside to an organization like IEEE or something like that to have, recognized standards across the board rather than, inventing them in-house and then have them only apply to what they're doing. Because at that point, broader, it's not really a standard, only within a company. So areas, that's a big focus of what we're doing as well. And if you've got some more questions, Area's got a booth, and I think there's some people around that could give a little bit more information on what we're doing with standards. So we've got time for one more question. This has been great. So I'll hand it over to you, Julie.
Thank you. My question is about scalability. We talked about, proof of concepts, but we also talk about aircrafts and components, thousands of component manuals, aircraft maintenance with thousands of procedures. Do you think it scales in terms of management of content, management of 3D content, management of, updates that come and so on and so forth?
Depends on what you consider scalable. Is it scalable at this time for us to do AR across an entire program? In my opinion, no. It's just too much work to be done, and that's why we're trying to find specific areas where this makes sense and implement it for the best return on investment. Is it scalable for those specific sets of data? Yes. It will take a lot of work for us to define that process, and it will also help if there's certain vendors out there that are trying to establish it to make it easier for, maybe the MEs versus the software engineers to develop that. If we can get to that point, then yeah, I believe that we can scale within respect to the program, not across the entire program. That's just from my specific applications.
I think it's scalable if we're strategic, and like remote assistance, it's definitely scalable. Yeah, that one is. Yeah, for work instructions, there's the challenge of being able to take content that's already there and significant changes in order to be able to make it accessible to create the work instructions in an automated fashion, or not an automated, but in a more efficient fashion. I think if we're careful about how we approach that, it's scalable. If we're not careful, I think that we could have an issue. So.
I think in order to scale, we have to do some basic IT stuff, because we have to have management platforms for all these wearables. We have management platforms for our mobiles, for workstations, but we don't have any for glasses or something. So that's some basic work to be done in order to scale that. So there's some IT infrastructure missing.
Okay, guys. I'd like to thank the panel here, Dr. Todt.